K3 Scout surveillance drones used by the Britain's Royal Navy have triggered national security concerns after an investigation found that cameras fitted to the aircraft had been transmitting heartbeat communications to an IP address in China. The cameras were supplied by a third party to British defence contractor Kraken Technology Group, which had assured the company that they were secure. The Ministry of Defence subsequently removed internet connectivity from the cameras. The Telegraph reported 12 million fleet has been used by the Royal Marines since March and was frequently deployed near sensitive security meetings, raising concerns about the potential exposure of information. The development has renewed fears over Chinese espionage targeting Britain's military and defence supply chains, concerns that have persisted for several years. Drone manufacturer uses third-party components. An investigation into the drones found that the cameras had been transmitting heartbeat communication to an IP address based in China. Such communications are typically used to indicate that a device is online and functioning normally. Kraken Technology Group, a major British defence contractor responsible for supplying the drones, had sourced the cameras from a third party after being assured that they met security requirements. This story has been broken by the Telegraph. The fact that the drones had been deployed close to the highly sensitive meetings involving senior special forces personnel has heightened concerns. There are also questions over reports that the cameras may have remained active even after the drones were switched off. The incident has triggered wider concerns within Britain's defence establishment because the K3 drones were part of a future package being considered by the UK to help ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. This is a major failure to check origins of the components, and we have lost confidence in the platform. A defence source informed the Telegraph, the platform which broke this story. The K3 Scout model has been purchased by the US Special Operations Command and has participated in NATO trials in the Baltic. The incident could also have implications for the Navy's Project Beehive program, which aims to develop a combined fleet of uncrewed vessels and traditional warships. The drones purchased from the Kraken were part of the Royal Navy's surface flotilla. If we cannot say with confidence what is inside our own military equipment, we cannot say it is ours or that we are sovereign, Alicia Kearns, the Shadow Security Minister, told the Telegraph. Quote unquote, when the cameras built on Chinese parts are found recording our special forces, their faces, trainings and operations, we should not be surprised. We should be furious that we still haven't woken up to the realities of the threat we face, said one of the sources to the Telegraph. The government had initially announced a $5 billion investment in military innovation and pledged to make defence procurement easy, future-friendly and high-tech. Now, however, the game changes now. There are concerns over Chinese interference in supply chains. There are concerns that whether various layers of the military equipment have been compromised or not. The Ministry of Defence in UK maintains that there is no evidence to suggest that sensitive data or military systems were accessed or transmitted abroad. According to them, a routine cyber vulnerability assessment identified an issue affecting a Kraken unmanned surface vessel subsystem used by the Royal Navy. A thorough investigation found no evidence of MOD data or system being accessed, compromised or transmitted externally. This is what the UK's Defence Ministry official said. And he also said that our assurance and testing processes are designed to identify and address potential vulnerabilities early, and we continue to undertake them. But that's not the issue. Issue is how far the China has gone in terms of tech infiltration. The spokesperson for the Kraken Technology Group also sought to reassure that no sensitive information had been compromised. From the group, it was said that we are aware that some third-party NDAA-compliant cameras had a small number of components originating from outside the UK. NDAA compliance refers to equipment meeting requirements under the US National Defence Authorization Act, including restrictions on components and manufacturers deemed to pose security risks. Now, this is what happened in UK. And this happens in the wake of the car of the United Kingdom's Prime Minister being geotagged, breached. But there is an India context. Till last year, 1/3 of CCTVs were coming from China. Civilian technologies like CCTVs at red lights can be manipulated. Something which Israelis did when they bombed Supreme Leader's residence in the first 48 hours when he was killed in Tehran. They were able to manipulate the CCTV cameras of Tehran They were not military technology. Now, on this issue, I'm joined by Adya Madhavan, research analyst, Takshashila Institution. Thank you, Adya, for joining me. Dr. Sanat Kaul, Chairman, International Foundation for Aviation, Aerospace and Drones. Thank you, Dr. Kaul. Group Captain, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Narang, and an author, Senior Fellow at Manohar Parrikh Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. And Group Captain V.N. Jha, Senior Scientist, former Joint Director DRDO, who's always been part of my show when it comes to tech, drones and missiles. I thank all of you for joining me, but let me first straight away go to Dr. Sanat Kaul. Dr. Kaul, what is the learning curve for us and how serious is this issue?
I think it's a very serious issue because our dependence on foreign equipment, critical foreign equipment, both in defense and in civil side, is extreme. And I don't know how much we are doing about it. As far as I know, like some drone manufacturers have assured me that the defense drones which they supply, they have to give a written assurance, which has been done in the case of UK also, that there is no Chinese part in it. But we don't know what is the level and how much of scrutiny is done by the defense forces. But even in say civil, in the what happened some time back in Maharashtra, where the electricity system was dislocated by use of cybercrime criminals. So it's not an easy thing, and India has to wake up and decide how to handle this situation because there are far too many Chinese parts and other parts. And why are we not in a position to locally manufacture them when our demand is substantial? We should be in a position to do it. These are some issues which are actually very serious and they face the country, which the government has to answer now.
Okay. Group Captain Narang, your opening comments on the case that has come up. And then I'll give you certain examples from the India context and then we, take our conversation there. Because this comes in the wake of UK Prime Minister's car being bugged. That was reported, not denied. And they had geotagged this car. 5 PMs were tagged. It took them 5 years to find that the car is being geotagged. So they knew when he was going to the Bletchley, when he was going to the command center, when he was in the Prime Minister's office, or when he was in the Prime Minister's residence. They knew his movement.
Yeah, see, today the challenge which is posed by global supply chains entering into our manufacturing ecosystem. Initially, we used to, our public sector used to manufacture most of the things, most of our defense products. But in the recent past, our private sector is increasingly participating in the indigenization of various systems. Our drone segment is emerged as a very, very pragmatic system. But what has happened is China has willy-nilly monopolized some of the critical component segment and the civil drone segment. Now, as a result, most of the companies which are working in other parts of the world, they are discouraged to invest in those critical technologies. And they ensure some sort of incentives to their own companies that most companies, when you talk in terms of commercial viability, do not stand a way of surviving in that domain. Now, that kind of situations really pose difficulties in identification of such vulnerabilities. Second part is some of the components are routed through other countries, and so, even situation comes where not mind these suppliers if these companies claim those components as their own. Now, that makes it even more difficult for anyone who's trying to really differentiate vulnerable components, imported components. There's a case started checking the bills of material till the last supplier, but even those were manipulated. They could go to 5 different hands before they reach the users. Now that is making for users to identify those vulnerabilities extremely difficult, and many Western countries have got used to having a complementary supply chains. Now India is also passing through the similar problem. Now, with the increasing participation of the private sector, since they do not have a holistic ecosystem, they tend to use the commercially available critical systems. Now, that part, the way it is impacting the West, in fact, I feel that vulnerabilities could also be slowly creeping into our world. Why? Because it's not only the Indian industry which is doing. Now Indian armed forces have also started manufacturing or at least doing some sort of work on drones and counter drone systems. Now what happens is, if that particular entity, whether industry or the defense forces, if they are developing or manufacturing a critical system like drone, counter drone, or any such system, cameras, sensors, payloads, and if they do not have a mechanism to really test the vulnerabilities of these systems, it can pose really serious challenges to the defense of the country. In addition, there is no body which is certifies indigenous design. Even if I am an Indian designer and I want to really, I develop that, they will certify my product for the performance, not for indigenous design, because there is no entity which is earmarked to certify that indigenous design. Now these kind of things have really complicated, and if you see how many people died in a pager attack in 2024, 40 people died and about 3,000 people got injured. Now that can really multiply into thousands and many more, tens of thousands. Even in case of Ukraine, Ukrainian Vice Premier Mikhail Fedorov on 16 March 2022 went on X to declare that hundreds of Ukrainians got killed using the Chinese DJI products. And in fact, he asked the DJI CEO Frank Wong to come up and open up and tell where are the DJI products in Ukraine. Now that is the kind of dependencies on the foreign suppliers that a country which has got those components in its own country is not able to supply. He wanted when those components were supplied, where were they? So imagine the kind of seriousness in which this global supply chain, the vulnerabilities they bring. And we really have to really prepare for such contingencies if we really want India to be secure. Remember, we have a very strong adversary on the western border, and we have a very emerging
Okay.
technology power in the northern borders, and we have an insurgency externally embedded.
I'll come to you, sir. I'll come to you. Let me take opening. Let me take opening comments. Let me take opening comments from Adya Madhavan. She joins me from Takshashila, and then I'll go to Group Captain Mr. Jha. Adya, there is also another aspect to it. One aspect is there are components which come from abroad. From I think 1st of April this year, there's a lot of restrictions that have been put in place by the government of India. But there is also intrusion of the Chinese high-tech into civilian gadgets. For example, CCTV cameras at parking. The example in case is the way they targeted the supreme leader of Iran was by using the traffic cameras of Tehran. They had information, but they weaponized the traffic cameras. So we are looking at these high-tech technologies which are like a double trap door. People can come in and people can go. It's like those German tunnels in 1970s, both sides knew and they were using it against each other. No one closed it.
See, I think the thing is these are two separate issues. For defense components, we already have much more stringent measures in place. For example, in terms of what India's policy is, we do say that, we won't procure systems where any critical components are sourced from countries in which are land borders, which primarily alludes to China. The thing is, with civilian technologies, there still need to be much more rigorous guardrails in place on that front. And, we've been talking a lot about indigenous manufacturing, and being Atmanirbhar is something that's very central to how we've been proceeding our policy today. But the fact of the matter is there needs to be prioritization on that front as well. Because, what does it mean? What does it mean to be indigenous? You can't, if we're not in a place where we can produce all our components in-house, all our components domestically, then invariably we need to face the fact that either we have to accept higher costs to be able to get some of these components and secure our supply chains and make sure we're not getting them from China, or we have to accept the fact that if we're not willing to do that, we may not be able to manufacture some of these platforms. So that's one issue. The second thing that I think is worth talking about is our procurement practices themselves. Something that was touched upon earlier was the fact that, we're trying to prioritize domestic manufacturing, and it's not just defense platforms anymore. It's also a lot of startups and smaller companies. And I think the fact of the matter is if we want to spend more money on developing uncrewed platforms and things like that. We also need to have procurement architecture that supplies long enough term capital for them to be able to secure their supply chain, to be able to be more deliberate about where things are sourced from. And then we can also, if there's more concentration in that front, be more rigorous in terms of the checks and balances, ensuring at every step of the way where the components are sourced from. And there are steps in the right direction on this front. In the Defense Acquisition Procedure, the DAP 2026, from what I've read, the Army Design Bureau has been working on a protocol to be able to figure out drone components for critical systems. And I think once we have some of these processes in place, some of these issues will be easier to mitigate, but there's definitely huge supply chain risk that exists as of now. Like Group Captain said, the Lebanon pager attacks, for example, these are issues that aren't new to drones, that aren't new to these kinds of platforms. And I think that's why the focus needs to be not just on securing the supply chains and being careful about where we source components for these platforms, but overall, like you said, with the CCTVs, for instance.
Okay. I think very fairly summed it up. Group Captain Jha, my first question to you is, what is the learning curve for us with this UK security breach that has happened? Subsequently, I'll come to the civilian technology issue. What is our learning curve? Because we import a lot of stuff. We import stuff from Russia. We are importing stuff from Israel. We are importing stuff from France. We are importing stuff from America. And there are no friends when it comes to strategic interests.
Ji, namaskar. I'm not surprised that all these are finding access into the, Chinese technology, Chinese spy technology are finding access into the world, all over. I'm not surprised about this, but I'm slightly surprised that we are talking of this today. After, many years it has been doing rounds there in that. I can give you the first-hand information about it. I have gone through it myself. When I entered DRDO just about, in 2009 or so, I entered at a high level as a senior scientist, design scientist. I was a project leader, project director, and I was guiding my other teams how to do the work in a time frame. And at that time, some of these technologies were only coming easily from Chinese market. Suppliers were there here in India as well and elsewhere. So we had access to these technologies, which came here. And to my surprise, when I visited with one such technology, not a camera, a small motherboard, a group of chips, to two of my labs, I was directed that kindly get it checked up by these two labs. We have got two very sensitive labs here in Bangalore, where we had taken it there. They said, sir, we are going through this day in and day out, and we are finding that seldom any motherboard or seldom any complex chip is without this, the botnet element or something else, which are the part of the spy network. Recall those days of when 5G was unveiled by Huawei, China. They were taking it pride that a camera at an intersection is doing all those things with the AI already incorporated in where you can recognize the face. It was part of their marketing. And they were taken by surprise that there was a hue and cry in entire Europe that we are selling our intelligentsia here in all our important intelligent network to the Chinese. So this has been happening from there. Now coming back to the defense. Now, the cameras are very sensitive, and we have seen ourselves. Delhi CCTV camera, we are aware of how it had happened. Those cameras can, they had imported from the Hikvision, which was already having the botnets, botnet Mobot, Robot Zero Box, Catus Rat, and you can name many of them. They were the part of those CCTV camera. So we are aware how sensitive a small CCTV camera can be part of the Chinese, intelligence gathering. So it is doing that spy work, spy cam, spy, the various types of spy program are there in that incorporate. And unfortunately, seldom any Chinese company is selling you any of these products without those bugs incorporated into it. Seldom. So I have gone through it, and thereafter in 2009 itself, DRDO had put a blanket, sort of sanctions onto any of the Chinese component, subsystem, camera, chipboards, motherboards coming here into the DRDO or into the defense unit. And it is not only at the product level. When we do S&T, Science and Technology program, there what we do as a science and technology, maybe something very innovative. These small products, motherboard, chips, cameras, something what we are using of that alternative. And if we have not checked it up, that it is compromised, then we are sending the information that what we are doing in our sensitive lab